Hello and welcome to my guide for Eden's Gate Descent Savage, also known as E2S. Now there are a few things that will need to be established before you start the fight. These are positions for Doom Void Cleaver, as well as Punishing Ray and Light and Dark Equilibrium. When establishing these positions, you will want your tanks and melee damage dealers on cardinal positions, while you will want your healers and range damage dealers on intercardinal positions. You will also need to rotate into pairs for light and dark equilibrium. When doing so, you will need a damage dealer paired with each tank and healer. I like to make those rotations occur into inner cardinal positions. This is because at one point in the fight, light and dark equilibrium resolves before Punishing Ray, and you want to be at inner cardinal positions for the light and dark equilibrium so as not to take unnecessary damage for Punishing Ray while the light and dark equilibrium is resolving itself. Now the first thing you're going to see as we run in here is Doom Void Cleaver. The way Doom Void Cleaver works is it does a conal AoE in the direction of each individual party member, which is why we have set up positions ahead of time to spread out from each other. So you'll see as soon as we pull the boss, we're going to get into those positions. I'll try and center the boss to make that more optimal. Now you're going to see as soon as those cones go out and these portals are going to open that Nixes are going to spawn from and then move toward the boss. If you get hit by any of those Nixes, you will take a damage down debuff, as well as another debuff that will increase damage you take from some of the boss's other abilities, so do your best to try and avoid those Nixes. The spaces in between them seem rather small, but as you can see, I can keep uptime on the boss while not getting hit by any of them. It is certainly applicable to do so in melee range. Now what he's casting now is Unholy Darkness, and you can see the stack marker from that. Just like in normal, you just need to stack up for that one. I personally stay out of the stack so that I can keep the boss faced away so that melee damage dealers can still get their positionals in. But if we have something like a black mage that would want to stay out of the stack themselves so they can keep casting, I will then help soak the stack as the tank. As soon as that Unholy Darkness stops casting, he's either going to cast Doom Void Slicer or Doom Void Guillotine. And because of this, it's essential that the boss stays facing straight. If you skew him at an angle, you could possibly kill some of your party members with the subsequent Guillotine, should Guillotine be the next mechanic he casts. Now, as you can see, Doom Void Guillotine is coming out. The way Doom Void Guillotine works, just like in normal, is that a wide line AoE will issue from the boss's front to his back, so we all get to his sides. Give it plenty of insurance space so that you don't get hit, and then Nixes will spawn in a line in alternating direction. Make sure you don't get hit by them. And then Darkfire 3 goes out. Now, had that been Doom Void Slicer, we would have needed to get into the boss's hitbox. You'll have an example of that later in the fight. Darkfire 3 goes out, and just need to spread out for that. And next is going to be Punishing Ray, which is what we set positions for before the fight, once again. And as you can see, the cardinal Punishing Rays are within melee range of the boss, and the inner cardinals are out away from the boss. Now he's just cast Spell in Waiting. Whenever he casts Spell in Waiting, you need to pay attention to what order the mechanics are going to resolve in, and not necessarily what order they get cast in. In this particular portion of the fight, the first thing that's going to resolve is Darkfire 3, so make sure you're watching your timer on that. So he's just cast Darkfire 3 there, right there. And wait till it has about 5 seconds left, and then make sure you're spread out from everyone. Now the next set of mechanics is all going to resolve at the same time. You're going to see everyone stack behind the boss. I wait until he starts casting Hellwind to go back and stack myself, so that again I make sure he's facing away from the group so that melee again can keep up time and positionals. And you'll see there's one person marked with Shadow Eye, our Machinist here. He's standing behind the group so that we can all easily face away from him, and so that he can also share the damage from the Unholy Darkness that's marked on someone in the group there. The two people with Hellwind have gotten outside of that stack because the way Hellwind works, the two people that are marked with Prey here, is that they both get reduced to 1 hit point at the end of its duration. So they don't want to also take the damage from the stack up mechanic. But we all take some damage there, it gets healed up. And then I'm going to go ahead and get back north so that I can face the boss away from the group again. Next thing is going to be tank busters. So this is called Shadow Flame, and it's a tank buster on both your main and off tank. Now typically what I'll do is I'll assign one tank to use Reprisal on Shadow Flames, and the other tank to use Reprisal on Entropy, which will be the next thing the boss casts. Entropy is a raid wide. We also used Personal Mitigation for that Shadow Flame, and then we're using all of our raid wide mitigation on this Entropy here. Next, the Hand of Erebos comes out, and it's going to cast Empty Rage here. Now you can tell he's casting Empty Rage because of the orange streak that's moving towards the boss and tethered to him. Let me see if I can get a better shot of that. No. Maybe if I back up a little bit. Entropy down, and then Empty Rage. Yeah, so this orange streak here tells you that the Hand of Erebos is casting Empty Rage. For that, we all need to get to the side opposite from the hand, because it's going to do a rather large AoE that we need to stay out of. And there's the AoE there, so everyone needs to be outside of that ring, which is why we've lined up on the edge here. The very next thing he's going to cast is Doom Void Guillotine. Now this Doom Void Guillotine goes out faster than there would be an opportunity to turn him, so I just make sure that Doom Void Guillotine is going from east to west, and then we all dodge either north or south, just like that. And then the very next one is Doom Void Slicer. Now Doom Void Slicer is a donut mechanic, so as we're dodging these nixes from Doom Void Guillotine, we all get under the boss within his hitbox to dodge the Slicer. And then nixes are going to spawn in protean positions, in cardinal and intercardinal positions. Now you can see another tether going toward the boss. This is a purple tether. That means another Hand of Erebos has spawned, and it's casting Empty Hate, which is a knockback from the direction of the Hand of Erebos. Everyone should be able to use their knockback prevention for this mechanic every time that it comes up. So make sure you're popping either Arm's Length or Surecast. If you don't have that available, or you're too late to cast it, you can run toward the side with the hand in order to not get knocked off, but it's a pretty far knockback, so your safest bet is to use your knockback prevention. Immediately after that is Doom Void Cleaver, so we all get into our positions. Just like that. Now, the markers that we set up on the map are for flare positions that happen later in the fight. And the reason I'm mentioning this now is because you'll notice the boss is not on the B marker. Well, in order for us to keep uptime while flares are going out, we need the boss to be over there if we want to do our flares based on where these markers are. And while these nixes are going out is your best time to move the boss back into position if you're going to move him back. Alternatively, you can have people take their flares opposite the markers, but that requires some fast thinking that you will typically not find in PUGs. That requires adjustment that is dangerous to do when there's low communication, as will typically be the case in Party Finder. So it's a lot easier to just move the boss according to your markers, and so this is the best time to do that. He's got a little bit of time before he casts the next Tank Buster, and you're going to see me move him back into position here. And again, Shadow Flame Tank Buster is going out. And because we just had a Shadow Flame, we know the next thing is going to be Entropy raid-wide. Then we have another Spell and Waiting combo. Again, we're paying attention to what order abilities resolve in. And the first thing to resolve is going to be Flares. So we're ignoring that Hellwind for now. And you can see flare markers go out there. They all have to get to opposite ends of the arena from each other, as far away from each other as they can, which is why we've put the markers in place. Now, these markers are so that DPS can keep uptime at B, so you will have one healer, one tank, and one damage dealer marked for flares every time, as long as everyone is alive. If anyone's dead, that may not be the case, but under ideal circumstances this should be how this mechanic is working out. And we have our tanks running to the northwest at A, which will be in front of the boss, and we have our healers running to the southwest at C, to get everyone away from each other. It is possible that your main tank can be marked for flare, so your off tank needs to be ready to provoke should that be the case, so that the boss can stay in position for uptime from your damage dealers. Get back on the boss, and the next thing that's going to happen is Punishing Ray positions will be established. And I move the boss in between those Punishing Rays so that we can keep uptime once again. Now you can see we already have a Spell and Waiting Shadow Eye marked, and you can see the Hellwinds just resolved on 2 of our players. Now keep in mind that Hellwind needs to be healed up before those players get into their Shadow Well, or they'll obviously die right away. And really the entire party can wait until after that Hellwind goes off before getting into Shadow Ray if you want to limit the damage people take as much as possible. But as you're getting into Punishing Ray, you need to keep in mind that you're facing away from the Shadow Eye. You saw that the Shadow Eye was in the southwest position there, so we all have to face away from that. And if you're in communication together, often the Shadow Eye can call out what direction they're in, so everyone knows which direction to face away from. Now, myself as the tank, you can see here I've already popped Rampart there. That's because right now I'm taking damage from the Punishing Ray, as well as auto attacks from the boss, and my healers are potentially faced away from me right now in order to stay facing away from the Shadow Eye, so they can't necessarily heal me right now. So a little bit of personal mitigation from the tank is good there. And the next thing that happens is Shadow Flame, so if you have a longer personal cooldown, it should last through both of those abilities anyway. And you saw me put up a Sheltron for that as well, and I pop another Sheltron just before Shadow Flame goes off. Now, because we just had Shadow Flame, you know the next thing that's going to resolve is Entropy. We have another raid 1. And right after that, we're going to have light and dark equilibrium, so we all split off into our pairs. Again, rotating to intercardinal positions if you can swing it. And all that needs to happen for light and dark equilibrium is you need to be standing on top of your partner. And if each tank and healer is paired with a DPS, then you will have opposite colors on top of each other in all cases, and it should resolve without any damage going out. Now, immediately after light and dark equilibrium, you can see it's still it just resolved right there. We already have Doom Void Cleaver casting, so make sure you get back into those Doom Void Cleaver positions ASAP. You can see almost moved there. Now we start migrating toward the south here, because the next thing that's going to happen is Unholy Darkness. You need to be ready to stack for that. So try and dodge Nyx's toward the south, stack for Unholy Darkness, and then he's either going to be doing a Doom Void Guillotine like he is here, or this one could be a Doom Void Slicer as well, so keep that in mind. But this one's Guillotine, so we move to our sides, and we're giving it plenty of insurance space. And then we dodge Nyx's. Next thing is going to be another Shadow Flame and then Equilibrium. I'm sorry, Shadow Flame and then Entropy combo. Properly mitigated. And then some raid-wide mitigation for that. Now we have another Spell and Waiting combo. As far as Spell and Waiting combos go, this is probably the most difficult one. Often party finders, if people are progging this, they will mention this as second flare prog or double flare prog. But the first thing that's going to happen in this Spell and Waiting combo is the Hand of Erebos is going to spawn, and he can either cast Empty Rage or Empty Hate. Just put up your knockback prevention regardless, because you're not going to need it anywhere else anyway, and react accordingly. Now in our case, you can see the purple line means he's casting Empty Hate, so we put up our knockback prevention, we're good to go. But had that been Empty Rage, we would have gotten to one side accordingly. And then you have to get the boss into position for flares before he starts casting this Unholy Darkness, so that people can keep uptime. But the next thing that resolves is going to be flares, so we're watching that timer for flares on the debuff. As soon as it's down to 5 seconds left, you want your flare targets to run out. And then we immediately get back in to stack for Unholy Darkness. Mitigate it as much as you can, because your flare markers may not get back in time, so you need as much extra mitigation as possible to account for the less people. Now the next thing that goes out is Shadow Flame, and you can see a tank swap also happened there. There's always going to need to be a tank swap there, because whichever tank had flare before, the other tank will have it now. So tank swap, then mitigate the Shadow Flame, and then flares are going to go out at the same time that you have 2 Shadow Eyes going out as well. And you can see our Shadow Eyes have gotten behind the group, and they've separated themselves from each other as well. You're going to see that happen right now. That's what we put the 1 and 2 marker on the map for, is to give them proper spacing. And because those things resolve at the same time, your flare targets need to keep in mind that they need to be facing away from the boss as they're running those flares out. I'm going to pause this for a second here. Right now what you see me running out for is Darkfire 3, and usually for Darkfire 3 you're going to want everyone who's marked with it to spread out along the same side that your group is on, so that they're not clipping your people running back in from flare, and so that whoever doesn't have the Darkfire 3 can stay in position and keep uptime. The tank who currently has aggro obviously needs to get the boss into position, but everyone else should be spreading out along that wall. Then we have light and dark equilibrium, so get into your partners. And as soon as that resolves, you're going to want to get into your punishing rays. And then it's Doom Void Cleaver, so stay in the same direction you were in for punishing ray, and then dodge Nyxes. And that is the whole final spell and waiting combo. You've gotten past double flares. After that, there's a Shadow Flame Tank Buster, and then you have a long wait time before your next raid wide, which is Quietus. I do want to back up and mention one thing real quick. Keep a close eye on the limit break gauge. You can see that after the first set of flares goes out in these double flares, as we're going to see here, we already have limit break built right there. So while you're waiting for the second set of flares to go out, this is a pretty ideal time to bust that third limit break for max damage, if that's what you're going for. So back at the end here, he does his final Doom Void Cleaver and then Shadow Flame. And then we're waiting for Quietus to go out. Now, Quietus phase is the most movement intensive portion of the fight. This is what groups will typically be working on for the longest. So try and pay attention here. After Quietus goes out, he's going to either cast Cycle of Chaos or Cycle of Retribution. Now, each of these is a set of 3 Doom Void mechanics in a row. This first one that he's casting here, Cycle of Chaos, is going to be Doom Void Guillotine, followed by Doom Void Slicer, followed by Doom Void Cleaver. So you need to make sure you're at the boss's sides, and then you go in for the Slicer, and then you get into position while also dodging Nyxes for the Cleaver. And you're going to see I get hit by one Nyx as I'm trying to move there. It is a bit difficult to dodge that set of Nyxes, but we're still just fine. I had Hollow Ground up for that one. Whatever he cast first, he's going to cast the other cycle next. So since he just did Cycle of Chaos, he's going to do Cycle of Retribution next. Cycle of Retribution is Doom Void Slicer, followed by Doom Void Cleaver, followed by Doom Void Guillotine. So you need to get in, then to your positions, then to sides. And you're going to see us execute that here. You see I get into the boss's hitbox in my position. Then we stay in position for the Cleaver. And then we move to our sides. Now a special note here is that the Guillotine hits a lot harder than any of the Nyxes are ever going to hit you for. So you need to really make sure you get to your side ASAP and not be too worried about which side you're going to based on what your Cleaver spacing was. Just make sure you get to a side, period. And try not to get too hung up on which side that is. Now the next thing he's going to cast, should he stay alive, is Quietus, and you're going to see him start to cast that here. And then after that, Quietus would be a random cycle, either Cycle of Chaos or Cycle of Retribution. Then 3 more Quietus casts that each get more deadly as they go on. And then the final quietus is going to be his enrage. That's it for the fight. Thank you for watching. If you want more content like this, you can always find me in my Twitch, which I will link below. I'm constantly progressing new content in the Party Finder. And if you comment on the video, I will try and answer any questions you have. And thank you for watching. I will leave you with a complete version of our clear video with callouts for your viewing pleasure. Thank you.
Might be a bit difficult.
These are positions. And stack behind bottom. Guillotine sides. Dodge nixes. Darkfire 3, spread out. Next will be Soak Your Rays. Start soak. First thing to hit will be Darkfire 3. Watch your timer. Die Harder. Is this Die Hard? I mean, we are kind of getting towards Christmas. It's the season for Die Hard, right? I'm pretty sure. And stack. Get out if you have help. Shadow Flame. There it is. Entropy is next, right? Watch the hand. Go west. Guillotine sides. Slicer in. Knockback prevention.
Shit.
Oh, Dooku.
And positions for Cleaver. Shadow Flame. And I need to move him. Entropy, raid white. First thing to hit will be Flare. Alright, I'm keeping it.
Eye southwest.
Heal up Hellwind. Soak your ray, look away. Shadow Flame is next. Next is Entropy. Light and Dark Equilibrium. Cleaver positions. Dodge Nixes, stack south. Get over here, get over here.
Let's go.
Guillotine side. Dodge Nixes, Nixes Shadow Flame. Alright, next we have Entropy, Voidwalker. And Knockback Prevention. Flares on top of us.
On him. Thank you. 10 seconds on play. Next we stack for Unholy Darkness. Provoke, next is Shadow Flame. Eyes to positions. Flares soon. Light and Dark Equilibrium. Soak your rays. Stay in position for cleaving. Next is Shadow Flame. And next is Quietus. Nothros will reprisal the first and third Quietus. Alright, random. Random cycle. It's chaos, sides, then in, then position. Hollow ground is up. In. Positions. Next will be retribution. In, then positions, then sides. Positions. Sides. And that's game, folks.
Oh, don't. It's not dead yet.
I mean, sure, knock on wood.
You don't know us.